I'm Michael here with some thoughts about packing for an extended overseas trip. And by extended, I mean between 1 and 2 months. That's exactly what I'm doing right now. In a few hours, my wife and I will be departing on an adventure in Southeast Asia. We have a one-way ticket to Bangkok, Thailand, and we plan on spending at least the next month in Thailand, and then perhaps moving on to other places, maybe Vietnam, maybe Nepal. But I thought it might be helpful to take a look at my packing strategy, because I've learned a few lessons over the years, and everyone has theories about how to pack for an overseas trip. And for me, it's always a learning experience, and I always make some mistakes and bring some things that I don't need, and I forget some other things that I wish I had brought. So one thing that I did on our last trip of this nature, back before the pandemic in 2020, early 2020, was I took some packing notes, and I basically, once I got home, I had some firm ideas about what worked and what didn't work in my travels. And for example, I have specific notes to bring 4 shirts of this nature, to bring 4 pair of pants to match the shirts. And one thing that I try to do is mix and match the different colors, of course, and bring complementary colors so you can get a lot of different outfits over the course of the 2 months out of the clothing that you bring. From a packing organization standpoint, I am generally a believer in packing cubes or packing organizing bags, whatever you want to call them. So I use a color coding system, and most of these are by Pro Packing Cubes, but I have a couple of different brands in here. But I can look and I can see, okay, this is pants, these are shirts, these are underwear, and this is shorts and swim gear, socks. But just by seeing the color of the bag, I immediately know what's inside. And on that note, we're going to talk about gear. I mean, we've just gone through the clothing. The real dilemma, if you are into photography and filmmaking and video, is how to pack your gear. And it's a big problem for me because I am blessed to have a lot of really nice gear. I've got a lot of the nice, for example, new Sony stuff like the A7S III camera. But the nicer cameras are larger, they're heavier, they require interchangeable lenses that add weight, and it just gets to be a lot when you're thinking about packing for a 2-month period of travel. So it's up to you, and it depends on what kind of content that you're creating. I'm trying to favor smaller cameras. I mean, these are kind of on the fence as far as what I'm going to bring. This is the Sony Rx100 Mark VII. I love the camera overall. It's got a few issues, and then it's really more of a still photography camera than a video camera. And I do a lot of video. So I really need to get the Sony Z7 or ZV-1, but it's sold out everywhere around the world because that's the more video-oriented version of this camera. But I'll probably bring this camera because it packs a lot of power in a very small package. Action camera, this is a DJI action camera. Basically, this is DJI's version of a GoPro. I've gotten great footage with this little camera. And I'm debating whether or not to bring a traditional camcorder. This is Sony AX53. Now, I have nicer camcorders than this one in my arsenal, but they're bigger, they're bulkier, they're heavier, and they attract more attention when you're traveling out and about. I typically try to carry one check piece of luggage and have one backpack to bring on the plane. I could go through this entire backpack, and maybe I'll do that in the future video, but in it you'll find my primary camera for most of the travels, and it's going to be this DJI Pocket 2. This is DJI's little weird video camera on a gimbal. It's really a pretty brilliant content creation device, so I'm going to try and use it quite heavily And I'm still debating about whether to bring the heavier cameras and the heavier equipment. I am bringing a drone, and my drone of choice these days is the DJI Mavic Air 2S. This for me is my do-it-all drone. Once I got this drone, I honestly stopped using a lot of my other drones, but rumor has it DJI is about to release the Mini 3 Pro, and if that was on the market now, I would buy it and take it instead, because this Air 2S weighs a little more, of course, than the Mini series, but it's a very capable drone with pretty much every bell and whistle that you could want. And I'm also bringing my Smart Controller. Now this thing's pretty bulky and heavy, but this is the DJI Smart Controller that matches with the Mavic Air 2S, and it just allows you to get the drone up in the air very quickly. You don't have to fiddle around with the cell phone and wires and so forth, so I think that's worthwhile. Of course, I'm bringing a travel laptop in there for video editing and maybe a few video games, and I'm bringing a spare little travel backpack. This is a little collapsible backpack. I love things like this that fold up for travel, and then you can open it up and use this as kind of a day pack when you're at your destination. And finally, last but not least, my trusty Tilly hat that has been really all around the world. We really appreciate having a hat, whether you're in cold weather or in hot weather, as we will be. One other thing I would note, you know, where we're going, Bangkok, Thailand, has pretty much everything any person could ever want. Incredible shopping. You can find pretty much anything under the sun in Bangkok except Breathe Right nose strips. These are strips that I use when sleeping, and I discovered a few years ago you can't really find them in Bangkok. I looked everywhere, and I looked throughout Thailand, and this is just one of those weird products that's very commonplace in the United States that is just unusual or exotic in Thailand. I ended up finding a box in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, but the point being, there may be a few products that you can't get once you travel to your destination. And that applies for clothing for me too, because I'm about 6'2" and weigh 220 pounds these days. So a lot of times I can't find clothing that will fit me in Southeast Asia because I'm not the typical buyer. But anyway, that's just a few thoughts about packing for an extended trip. I do have a trick up my sleeve. We can check 2 pieces of luggage, so I may throw some of this gear into this hard-sided luggage and just bring 2 pieces, and that would take a lot of stress off me, and I'll probably be able to bring some of my nicer camera equipment. Stay tuned, because we will be traveling throughout Thailand this next month, and we're going to be posting a lot of fun off-the-cuff videos just like this one. See ya!